A secure, prosperous, and sustainable Guyana was presented to this Honorable House on the 17th of January 2025 by the Honorable Dr. Ashni Singh, Senior Minister in the Office of the President with responsibility for finance and public service. Mr. Speaker, it is no surprise that this year's budget is the largest in our country's history. The trend has always been that the current budget always exceeds that of the previous year. This 2025 budget, totaling $1.382 trillion, is 20.6% larger than budget 2024 and will be funded by revenue collected from taxes, sale of carbon credits, withdrawal from the Natural Resource Fund, and borrowing. Budget 25, like previous budgets, under this government, again places much more emphasis on public infrastructure development, while the elderly, poor, and vulnerable are given next to nothing. Mr. Speaker, we all expect that budget 2025 would be larger than budget 2024. The ordinary Guyanese expected that after 4 years in the fastest growing economy in the world, and in a country receiving billions of US dollars in oil revenue, government would have provided much more for them. Mr. Speaker, 2025 budget has been described as disappointing, confusing, and misleading. There is no doubt, Mr. Speaker, that since 2020, the average Guyanese person has been struggling with the high cost of living. The ordinary man is finding it difficult to make ends meet. The high cost of food, transportation, and other necessities have been taking a heavy toll on the ordinary citizens. Government is well aware of this. It's an embarrassment in a country with the fastest growing economy, with the billions received from oil sector, or poor and vulnerable again handed pittance by this PPC government. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Minister informed this House that in 2022 and 2023, government had allocated $5 billion to address the cost of living concerns, which was increased to $7 billion in 2024, and now in 2025, $9 billion. He explained that the money would be used to ease cost of living pressure, basic cost of living pressure in 2025, based on consultation with stakeholders. The question is, Mr. Speaker, how would the money be used to ease cost of living pressure? We do not know how many persons benefit in 22, 23, and 2024. It seems that there is no accountability, Mr. Speaker, of this money. Mr. Speaker, it seems that government must have foreseen that the increase in cost of living would be much higher in 2025 than in 2024. And the reason for the increase in the $9 billion, Mr. Speaker, the PPP government has $9 billion to spend as they please. An avenue for funding support for the government in this year's election. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Minister in his budget presentation boasted that this government was able to double old age pension in 5 years to $41,000 and increase public assistance to $22,000 per month. He compared this with the APNO AFC coalition provision of $20,500 for old age and $9,000 for public assistance when we left office. Well, we will recall, Mr. Speaker, that things were not as expensive as they are now. And of course, we didn't have the abundance of oil revenue as this government now has. Mr. Speaker, 2019 budget was $300.7 billion. Today, the 2025 budget surpassed $1.3 trillion, backed by billions of dollars from oil revenue. Yet this government could only increase old age pension by $5,000 and public assistance by $3,000 per month. This marginal increase cannot and will not make a significant impact on the lives of the elderly and the less fortunate in these times of continued high cost of living. Mr. Speaker, our dollar had greater purchasing power in 2020 than when we left office than it has today. The elderly and the unfortunate are disappointed with these measures announced by the Honorable Minister. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Minister announced that income tax threshold increased to $130,000 per month. This is a welcome measure. He also informed that one parent will be allowed a non-taxable $10,000 for each child per month. These measures, Mr. Speaker, are aimed to further increase disposable income for our citizens. But how many persons will benefit from these measures? Mr. Speaker, in order to benefit from the increase in the tax threshold, one has to be receiving exceed of $130,000 per month. There are thousands of workers who will not benefit from this, since their salaries are below $100,000 and below, please, Your Honor. A parent of 2 children must receive a salary of at least $150,000 per month before his or her disposable income can be increased by $20,000. Mr. Speaker, the thousands of persons in the lower end of the salary scale will not benefit from these measures. Mr. Speaker, in order to combat the increase of cost of living foreseen in 2025, government is telling our citizens at the lower end of the salary scale that they have to work overtime and have a second job so that they can make ends meet. The first $50,000 from overtime and the first $50,000 from the second job will not be taxed. Mr. Speaker, an ordinary Guyanese. So, Mr. Speaker, the ordinary Guyanese are told that they have to work longer and harder so that they can make ends meet, not to get richer, but to make ends meet in this fastly growing oil economy. Reading the minister's presentation on Budget 2025, Mr. Speaker, my mind went back to a novel I read some years ago, Animal Farm by George Orwell. The ordinary animals working all day and even Sundays so that the pigs can have an enjoyable time. Mr. Speaker, it has been argued that Budget 2025, like previous PPPC budgets, focus on people and has equitable distribution of wealth to all Guyanese. Mr. Speaker, this is far from the reality of Budget 2025. This year, $209.3 billion will be allocated to further develop roads and bridges infrastructure. Billions of dollars will be placed in the hands of the contractor class, the friends, the family, and favorites of this government. The 2025 budget focuses on providing opportunities for and is designed to make the friends, the family, and favorite of this government much more richer than they are. While on the other hand, our ordinary Guyanese are told that they have to work extra hours and have second job to earn a living wage. This is the disparity of Budget 25. It lacks balance and equality. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Minister, in his presentation, stated that government, with the aim of providing the best possible care for our citizens, a $10,000 university health care voucher will be available to each person to help finance basic menu of health tests. The minister also told us that in 2020, immediately after taking office, set about to rebuild the health sector aimed at leapfrogging what was otherwise incremental approach to increase the sector's capacity. Mr. Speaker, after 4 years and billions of dollars spent to increase the sector's capacity, the government cannot provide basic health tests for our people. It was pointed out to us that there were improvements in the health sector, which include establishment of diagnostic lab, dialysis centers in Region 2, 3, 6, and 10, as well as Georgetown and along the east coast of Demerara. With the establishment of diagnostic lab, why is it that basic tests are not done at the government institution? Is it that we no longer have the qualified personnel to perform these functions? Or is it that we do not have the equipment and materials and the basic materials for these tests? Mr. Speaker, government acquired 2 power generation ships, which along with GPL will meet the growing demands until completion of the gas energy project. The Guyanese public are treated to a removal of VAT on the purchase of electric generators. Is this a message, Mr. Speaker, that the government is telling us that we will experience extensive power outages in 2025, despite acquiring the service of 2 power generation ships? If we have the capacity to supply demand for electricity, then why are we encouraging our citizens to purchase generator by removing VAT? Is it that the power ships are incapable to supply the current demand of electricity? We are promised that when the gas energy project is completed, electricity costs will be reduced to 50%, by 50%. This promise will not be fulfilled in 2025, Mr. Speaker. And so the people want to know when to expect this 50% reduction in the electricity costs. People in Region 2 wants to know when the electricity bill will be reduced by half. Mr. Speaker, as we listen to the Honorable Minister delivering his Budget 2025 presentation, one gets the impression that the shortcomings of this government after 4 years in office was caused by the APNU plus AFC term in office from 2025 to 2020, and that the APNU plus AFC did nothing useful at that time. The Honorable Minister seems to have a short and selective memory. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Minister describing tourism sector in 2020 stated, domestically, it exacerbated 5 years of policy neglect and plunged the sector into unprecedented hardship. By April 2020, visitors' arrival plummeted, revenue declined to 46%, and 30% of tourism workers jobless. But Mr. Speaker, just for the records, and the reminding of the Honorable Minister and the Guyanese public, I worked in the ministry responsible for tourism for a few months. When the APNU plus AFC government took office, a comprehensive plan was crafted to develop tourism in Guyana. By 2019, we had won 6 international awards. It was the APNU plus AFC that established Guyana as a tourism destination. In 2018, we received 183,000 visitors, injecting approximately $62.6 billion in our economy, being the second largest export earner at that time. More than the $13 billion earned in 2024, Mr. Speaker. Tourism contributed 22,000 jobs in 2018. The Honorable Minister, Walron, told us that in 2024, 2,000 jobs were created in the hospitality sector. 4 years after, and the capacity to increase employment has not increased. Mr. Speaker, there was indeed a drop in the arrivals in 2020. But before the lockdown, 86,000 visitors came to Guyana. Mr. Speaker, COVID-19 was the cause of the decline in the tourism sector in 2020. No one can doubt, Mr. Speaker, that tourism under the APNU plus AFC was on an upward trajectory. We had developed a comprehensive plan for tourism sector, which included establishment and development of sports and agritourism along with the Hospitality Institute. We must not forget that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have been accused of neglecting Gaisuko. We must not forget that APNU plus AFC during its term of office would have injected over $32 billion to Gaisuko in an attempt to make it viable. We in Region 2 will not forget the construction and the commission of the 5.4 megawatts power plant at Regina by the APNU plus AFC government. We still enjoy the Supanam waterfront, which was built by the coalition government at a cost of approximately $144 million. We cannot forget the Golden Beach Boulevard in the town of Bartica, built by the APNU plus AFC government in promoting tourism and local leisure. Mr. Speaker, the modern Moruca Bridge was built in the Moruca sub-region, was built by the APNU plus AFC at the request of the resident there. We must not forget that too, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Vincent Henry will remind us that in the town of Letem got an asphalted road built by the APNU plus AFC. This too we should not forget, Mr. Speaker. The Guyanese citizen will recall that APNU plus AFC government had promised and delivered on the promise of reduction of VAT and the removal of VAT on food and other essential items. Mr. Speaker, the APNU plus AFC reduced the 16% VAT that this PPP government placed on the people of Guyana, and we reduce it to 14%, bringing relief to all our citizens. We also remove VAT on food and other essential items. The reduction of VAT was a result of the request of the Guyanese people. We must not forget that as well, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, The Honorable Minister, Dr. Singh, should have considered reducing VAT to at least 12% in an effort to ease cost of living pressure faced by our people today. This is a measure would have benefited all our citizens. We had promised to establish passports and birth certificates and licensing office in Barbados, Esquip, and Linden. Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to say that those promises were fulfilled under the APNU plus AFC government. We must not forget that as well. Despite not having a large budget and excessive revenue at our disposal, the APNU plus AFC government spent on infrastructure, balance it with human development. Mr. Speaker, over the past year, I've been calling for tertiary education to be made free again. This year, the right to free education will be restored, and our students will be relieved of a burden that was placed on their shoulder by this PPC government. My hope, Mr. Speaker, is that more students take the opportunity to educate themselves. Mr. Speaker, since 2022, I've been making a call for treated water for all the residents living in Essequibo Coast. We were told that the station at Undernaming would have been completed and residents would have received treated water at the end of December 2024. We are still waiting for this service. We are now told that the water treatment plant will be constructed at Charity to Walton Hall. To this date, we are still waiting the commencement of this project. Mr. Speaker, I've been asked by some citizens to report to this House that for almost 2 years, they have completed payment for house at Charity since payment was made. No communication to these persons as to when they would have received their house lots. These persons are waiting. I was also asked, Mr. Speaker, to inquire from the Honorable Minister to explain what he meant when he stated eligible person with NIS contribution ranging from 500 to 740 contribution will get a grant depending on the year of the last contribution was made. Person wants to know what is the cutoff year to be eligible for the grant. Mr. Speaker, we know that our hardworking public servants are to receive 8% increase in salary this year. What we don't know is when they will receive their increase in salary. What is preventing this government from paying the increase from the 1st of January? Mr. Speaker, the people need money to survive in these times of high cost of living. Money has been budgeted, so pay them now, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there are at least 2 things this government should have done to mitigate the anticipated and continued rise in cost of living. One is to reduce VAT to 12%, and to do whatever it takes to increase the spending power of our dollar. Mr. Speaker, these are my observations and comments on Budget 2025, and cannot support the budget in its current form. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member.